happening is, few days back, let's take this lockdown period. From if you're living in a high rise, if you're living at about a 18th floor, 20th floor, 30th floor, you could actually see a very, very distant kind of a view. You were getting it. You could see hills and mountains, and people were taking pictures and saying, look at the fact that there's no pollution, there's no carbon, and nobody's traveling, nobody's got to go anywhere. You're all in your houses and you are actually getting to breathe the fabulous air. The air quality index had sort of, come down, which is good basically, because otherwise the typical air quality index in different indices, some put it at 100, some put it at 300. Delhi, Gurgaon, India, Mumbai, Bangalore, these are like highly polluted cities. So we've actually seen that happening. What happens when carbon emissions go down? What happens when pollution goes down? So the fact is, I think there's a game changer opportunity coming up in this space, because there are a lot of Indian manufacturers who manufacture batteries. There are a lot of them who manufacture components. Now, it is said that Tesla actually went ahead and said that there is some 100,000 moving parts in a regular car versus there's some only about 30 moving parts in a electric vehicle, which obviously also puts down carbon emissions. Basically, it's a very smooth ride. I've driven a EV. It's so silent. It's super silent. And now look at the technology that Morrison garage cars are coming up. They're voice controlled, and you don't even feel that you're missing out anything. So my question, Sachin, and something that an opportunity that is emerging for investors, I'm sure, like you mentioned, that the industry is extremely adaptive. But from whatever you are seeing, is there, like at the back of it, personally, we think, because we are connected so much with the oil industry, we think that, India is a place where only when you're pushed to the wall will you react. You will not be, what shall we say, proactive in doing things. So one fine day, there will be a policy which will say that, okay, no cars less than 5 years, except, which are 5 years old, can operate. Or maybe all these cars have to be scrapped out because the carbon is too much. We can't breathe this air. So I think something dramatic and radical will happen over the next few years, maybe in the next decade or so. But there is a very strong case that by 2030, we pretty much might see the end of fossil fuel driven cars, petrol and diesel cars. So do you see that in your research? And do you think that all these companies that you're all talking to and the investments that we are making in the auto sector, are they actually gearing up for this huge demand? Because although the penetration is small, but the numbers are humongous. So if all of us have to, suddenly change our one car or two cars to an EV, now let's assume that there's a lot of work happening on the fuel outlets also, where they're going to be charging points. That's happening in a huge way all across. But having said that, is the industry geared up for that, and could that also translate into a game-changing opportunity in the next 10 years?
So Karthik, one very clear thing is that obviously EV is going to be a reality. There is absolutely no doubt. But whether it is just the battery-led changeover or it's a hydrofuel cell changeover, it's only because the entire technology is actually evolving here. Now, the other important fundamental point you raised, whether we will see by 2030 complete changeover. Basically, I'll just bring the angle here is that we are a democracy, unlike China. So we will not see government coming and saying no. One fine day we'll just change over. Actually, if you recollect and go back, couple of areas. As a city like Delhi, there are already some level of mandates which have started to kick in. Yes. But the reality is this mandate has to be supported by some level of infrastructure from the government side, which will slowly kick in. But when we look at even if you observe how the global consumers are reacting, right? It's actually if you see heart of it. Whether it's China, which is really growing, which is one of the hot market for the EV, or European markets, you will observe that it's not the consumer who is looking for the solution. It is the governments who are driving it, or even in India context, whether it is CNG or push towards EV, it is some of the courts who are driving it directly, indirectly. It's driven by a regulator rather than the consumers. Consumer still wants heart of heart a cheaper solution. I'm talking about the masses, not the exclusive, not the exclusive Model X of the world, right? So that's a separate market, because the way it is priced today, the battery prices are so expensive that for the masses to travel, it could be difficult. So the real solution, my sense is that if we are talking about the real sense of opportunity in EV, it is working very well when you put the commercial angle to it. Unless a vehicle is traveling, let's say 180 or 200 kilometers a day, it's not a viable solution as of now from the mass scale perspective. So my judgment here is, especially for the country like India, it could work really well for, let's say, the buses, because buses work just one route, right?
Right,
And
right.
ideally they would be covering so much space. Or let's say the three-wheeler piece, which is again used for the commercial purpose. So those are the ones who will quickly adapt to it, maybe followed by the two-wheeler. Again, we need to see. So there are a couple of launches, but the bigger challenge here in the country like India is, once you cross certain, it again connects back to the thing that how much income you have, right? Once you cross a threshold of 1 lakh, 1,20,000 is when the consumers actually retract back. You don't have that much buying power. So unless the battery prices collapse, you will not see this market expanding. And which is where I refer to that the technology is continuously evolving, which will keep pushing the battery prices down, and which is what will make the battery as the reality going forward. But if you look at some of the global projections, they're clearly suggesting that, let's say, by even with the government push, even with the battery prices coming down, it's only, let's say, on an incremental basis, not even on the complete mass basis. Incremental basis, you are saying that maybe 30-35% of the new vehicles will get sold on EV or a hybrid electric model by 2040. So it will be, and mind you, this is a big challenge for everyone because the entire supply chain has to ramp up. And which is where it's still a very progressive, and if somebody's playing for it, it's a really big opportunity. It will, but even when I say on a global scale, let's say 30% by 2040, it's still a big challenge for the entire industry. Whether the companies are ready for it or not, that's the other question which you put.
Right.
Obviously, you have the first mover advantage with a player like Tesla, but if you see, they are playing in the premium market, and what's really working for them is this inherent technology where they are able to give best efficiency, right? So apart from all the features, because that's what manufacturers can give. So like you referred, that in existing IC engine, which is the combustion engine model, there are many moving parts, and ultimately you get is an assembly. But once you move to the motor based, which is the battery based model, what an manufacturer can offer is only the BMS system, which is how best efficiently you can use your battery and convert the power back into the speed to the wheels, or the other associated features which you give in the car. That's where the manufacturer will start making more and more money. So from that perspective, if you see, it's the Tesla which has done well. But the rest of the value chain, if you see, whether it's the distributors, how many dealer distributors you have, the ability to service, all of this is still a piece associated with the existing OEMs. And you will see not just, so India will be far behind because there's no real demand for it. But in European angle, you will see multiple new whole host of launches in next 2 to 3 years. You will certainly see, because that's how companies are gearing up for that. So existing guys are actually gearing up, and they will, it's not just gearing up, but they are actually about to launch their models.